Hello, Gil here with the Sailing Vessel Last Affair, and today I'm just going to make a quick wooden jig for making lanyards and bracelets. So if you've ever seen a Solomon knot, Solomon ladder, or a Turk's head knot bracelet, it's going to be a jig to hold that while you tie it. Okay, here's the supplies you're going to need. I have just a scrap piece of wood. It was about 5 inches wide. I believe it's a piece of cedar, ½ inch deep or so, left over, so I used that. You could use anything really. I'd say 4 to 6 inches wide is probably good. A little bit of 1x2, and I had some scrap pieces of wood here as well, and I'm going to cut these in the width of this particular piece, so there'll be the cross supports here. I went ahead and cut 2 of the ½ inch thick ones and 1 3/4 inch for the front and 1 for the back, so twice the number of these. Essentially it's going to be 6 pieces that width. The reason I did these this high, I'm going to epoxy these together. It gives me enough room to get my hands down underneath it when tying the knots. You'll need a 1/4x20 carriage bolt. It's important to get a carriage bolt. If you notice, it has a square edge on it, and that square edge is going to fit in the groove that we cut in the piece of wood, so that so it doesn't twist. Wing nut, it's also 1/4x20, and I have a couple of just 1/4 inch dowels. Essentially, I'm going to put that in the bottom to keep the piece from rotating. I'll show you that in a moment. I have a router table set up with a fence here just to keep it from moving back and forth. Basically, put a 1/4 inch 1/4 inch router bit in here. This is actually a little bigger than the 1/4 inch right now, but what I did was I put the bit in there, I set the wood in the place I wanted it, I held it, turned it on, and slowly rotated the router up until the bit came all the way through the top. Once it did, I was able to, actually started it from this side, was able to just feed it right across and cut that groove in it. And you want to stop before you get to the end. While you have this thing cut like this, be really gentle with it. Because this cut goes with the grain, it's really easy to split. So until we get our cross supports on here, and on the other end, it's pretty weak and could split. You can ask me how I know that. It would be from experience. I took one of these and I tapped it on the table to get the sawdust out of it and split it right in half. Once you have your groove cut, for a 1/4 inch groove that's going to fit the carriage bolt, you want to cut the groove a little wider and deeper to account for the arch in the top of the carriage bolt, so it'll sit flat on the table. So you see here, I just went ahead and routed a little groove right in that around the side of the bolt. So it keeps it from turning, and also low enough that it won't hit a table. If this is the bottom side, it won't hit a table. It's not uncommon that I have epoxy laying around, so I'm just going to use a little bit of epoxy instead of wood glue. You can absolutely use wood glue. I just figured epoxy is going to dry really quick for me. So I just mixed this up according to the directions. I have just a little bit, and I'll brush this on and clamp these pieces together. I'll do the same. This one is, I have this one a little bit offset just so there's more room for my fingers to work when I'm doing the knotting on this with this jig. Now it's just a matter of clamping these together. Alright, so I'm just going to clamp this down good and tight. Now we'll repeat with the other side here. Okay, you can see I took these blocks of wood that I was epoxying before, and I just cleaned them up. I did end up countersinking a couple of holes and screwed it together on the bottom. They're countersunk, so they slide nicely wood to wood. And then I did sand it around, and I just kind of rounded off the edges here, mainly just because when I'm working, I don't want to cut my finger or get splinters. And now what I'm going to do on the bottom here is I'm going to drill a hole all the way through it. The carriage bolt will come up and a wing nut will tighten right there. And then on the bottom side, I have a hole here for a dowel. And the dowel will ride inside of that and just slide forward. That'll keep it from pivoting this direction. Here's the final product right here. What you can do is, again, if you loosen up this piece here, let's say you want to make an 8-inch bracelet, you slide it right to the mark for 8 inches. And I have it hooked up right now for, for a regular shackle, like a sailing shackle. So one thing to note is when you get ready to put your lines down here for your measurements, so what you want to do is you'll notice you put your tape measure right at the back side of where the bolt goes through, the shackle goes through, and then right over here you measure to that same spot where you started. So you can see it's right at the 4-inch mark. You then take your lines down below, and you see I drew a line there at the 4-inch mark, and then mark every inch as you go. Piece of wood, so if I want to do something that's 8 inches, I just move it right to the 8 line and tighten it up, and as long as I'm using these shackles, I have an 8-inch long bracelet. Be sure when you measure, just to double check yourself, you put the end of the tape measure just before the shackle, and then you'll notice it's right at the 8-inch mark, which is perfect.